The tongue and groove joint is easy to make, relatively strong, can be made on simple equipment like a router table or table saw. As with any joint, it's important to make sure that your wood is consistent in thickness and accurately cut. It's also important for the wood to have clean, square ends, and using a work stop to size pieces makes your joinery turn out better. I use a 1/2 inch deep groove on nearly all of my tongue and groove joints. A good combination square makes setting this blade height easy. For the first cut, we set the blade as close to center on the wood as we can by eye. Make one pass down the full length of the wood, turn it around end for end, and make another pass, and that centers the groove exactly on the wood. Then we check that groove against the panel that'll go in it, or the dimension that we want for the groove. As expected, the groove is too narrow, so we have to bump the fence slightly towards the blade and recut it. The fence adjusted needed will be very small because we're removing wood from both sides of the groove. Then recut the test piece, making sure to turn it end for end between cuts. After repeating this process a couple of times, our groove fits the wood nicely. Now we can go ahead and cut grooves on all of the work pieces that require them. With all of these pieces, we make the one cut, turn the piece end for end, and make the second cut to finish the groove. If your groove is over 1/4 of an inch wide, you might have to make another pass down the middle to clean out the material. For the first cuts when forming our tongues, we want to make sure that the cutting tips of the blade at the top of their arc is below the edge of the groove. We want to sneak up on this cut. I used a blade for my combination square to set a cut distance from my gauge block and fence to the other side of the blade to 1/2 inch. Remember, with a cut like this, we have to measure to the other side of the blade, not to the edge nearest the fence. Then with the gauge block clamped in position, you can use that to size the cut and begin nibbling away the material on both sides of the tongue. It really only takes a few passes to remove all the material from a 1/2 inch long tongue. When you've completed the cuts on a test piece, try fitting the tongue into the groove. You might have to raise the blade slightly and recut both sides of the tongue. If the tongue is close to fitting and you'd like to smooth its surface anyway, you can go ahead and use a rasp or sanding blocks to fine-tune the dimensions. I like a fit that allows me to seat the tongue without a lot of force. As with any assembly, I do a full dry fit to make sure I don't have to fine-tune one of the joints before applying glue. Then we carefully apply a thin, even coat of glue on all of the meeting surfaces. Then we can go ahead and clamp the assembly up, make sure that it's flat in the clamps, and let it set to dry. After the glue is dry, we can sand all the joints flush and get it ready for finish. When you apply finish to the tongue and groove joint, the differences in the grain make it stand out. In addition to its visual appeal, the tongue and groove joint is reasonably strong and lets you use it in a lot of places.